Good morning. I want to welcome you to our second day of Dreaming God's Dream for Extravagance, United Church of Christ. Thank you for being here this morning. We will be here in the Amistad Chapel all morning, beginning with our devotional, and then hearing from Meg Riley, and then having conversations with Meg. And so a couple of things. We do not have a scheduled break because we are live streaming. And so as you need to take a personal break, please feel free to do so. And also, right behind that big pillar there, I can't see it from where I am, but on the second level, if you go up around to your right or left and come up to the second level, you'll see coffee and soft drinks. And so please take advantage of that as you have opportunity. I'm glad to welcome you to our morning worship, and our devotion this morning will be led by Reverend Rita Root, who is the Executive Association Minister of the Eastern Ohio and Western Reserve Association, associations. And so we're very pleased that she is here to be with us and to lead us and have others join us in leading worship this morning. Rita?
Good morning. I invite you to stand either in body or in spirit for our call to worship. Eternal God, known to us in many forms and languages, we gather to listen to the whispers of your voice. Be thou our vision. God, come many places, representing the great diversity of your table. We are women and men, older ones and younger ones, tired and impassioned, despairing and hopeful, single and partnered, laity and authorized ministers, all the expressions of your creation. Creator God, we celebrate all the diversity in our midst and thank you for welcoming us to this table. Help us to listen more than talk. Help us to let go of our own agendas in order that we might know your will. Let us join together in hymn 451, Be Thou My Vision.
Please be seated. We have an invitation to listen from the letter to the Ephesians, so that with the eyes of your heart enlightened, you may know what is the hope to which God has called you.
We'll remain seated during this next part of it. We'll sing 2 verses of God of the Sparrow, God of the Whale, interspersed with some silence. So let us join together in verses 1 and 2 of hymn 32.
Listen and reflect from Proverbs 29:18. Where there is no vision, the people perish.
How does the creature say grace?
Write the vision, make it plain, so that a runner may read it.
Now I invite you to a time of silence. Reflect, write down your thoughts if you'd like, and finish the sentence in listening. I understand God's vision to be. When I was growing up back in the day, I was known as quite a handful. When all of my friends and siblings were running away from folks, I was always running towards the families of the migrant workers and playing with their children, driving my mother quite insane, as she never knew if those gypsies would take me and steal me away, and I was always praying, please, please steal me and take me away from here. In the early 60s, when most of the girls in my class were trying to figure out which one of the Beatles was the cutest, whether it be Paul or John, nobody really liked Ringo, or George, I was reading the Communist Manifesto and arguing with the parish priest about whether or not the disciples really were communists, because they did, after all, suggest that we hold everything in common and that no one would have need. And as my friends were listening to those wonderful songs that could make up the Codependence tour, Baby, You've Lost That Loving Feeling, and Baby, I Need Your Loving, I was listening to Leslie Gore, "You Don't Own Me," and thinking that truly was the song of my life. And so it's no surprise to anyone, I think, that when I read Scripture, I read it through the eyes of liberation. I read it through the eyes of those who have been put on the margins, those who have been denied fullness of life and dignity. And so my vision, my understanding of God's vision is always that of human dignity, fullness of life, liberation for those who have been oppressed, and community for those who have been tossed aside. And so I invite you now to share with each other, either openly or just turning to the person sitting next to you, and share a bit of what you understand God's vision to be. I know it's always a little bit dangerous to give permission to people to talk and then to tell them to stop. But I would hope that as we continue our conversations today about what this new community of faith that we're creating will look like and where God's vision will be made known through our work. Hold on to those visions that you have, those dreams that you have, because God indeed is doing something brand new in us and through us. So let us stand and sing together hymn 433. Behold, says the Lord, I am doing a new thing.
Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it?
Our presence here suggests the answer.
So let us move boldly with open hearts to listen, discern, and participate in God's new thing.
Let us go forth as children of our God. Amen.
Thank you all for our shared worship, and I want to thank Quinn Gormsley for our piano playing this morning. Thank you, Quinn. Beautifully done. Well, let us begin our work for today. Thank you for being here with open hearts and minds and souls to the movement of God's Spirit among us as we move forward. I am so thrilled. Many of you have already had the chance to meet Reverend Meg A. We've had shared meals together, we've shared worship together, we've shared conversation together. But let me formally introduce her to you. Meg is the pastor of the Unitarian Universalist geographically dispersed virtual community called the Church of the Larger Fellowship. And actually, this community of the Unitarian Universalists has been in place for quite some time, late 60s, early 70s, I think, when they began to gather through a mailing, a mailed newsletter, and became gathered in that fashion. And Meg became pastor of this community, and it moved to a virtual setting and an online setting. And she's brought some significant gifts to vision and broaden the ministry and reach of the Church of the Larger Fellowship. And And I have to say that it's very comforting to me that when, after General Synod, I found myself the gathering pastor of Extravagance UCC, that there was somebody I could call and say, help me, help me, help me, and thank you, thank you, thank you, as Anne Lamott would say. And Meg has been tremendously gracious and very welcoming and phenomenally hospitable in her sharing of ideas and information and the work that and ministry that she, her staff, and the Church of the Larger Fellowship are doing. And so please join me in welcoming Reverend Meg Riley. Thank you.
So when I heard this was happening, I said, please, can I be a fly on the wall? We didn't have the money for a meeting like that. And Joe said, well, I'll talk to Ben, and Ben's an old friend, so I had good feelings about this. And she said, yes, but there's the price of admission. You're the keynote. There went my fly on the wall idea. But, you know, and so I looked at the list of who was coming, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm keynoting to these people? I mean, there's so many of you who could be up here talking, and I just want to acknowledge that this will be a conversation, and that I'm really aware of the wisdom in the room. I'm also really aware that there are people joining us on live stream, and if your eyes are like mine, those Twitter feeds are not going to help you much. If you want to go to the live stream link, you could be in community with the people who are watching this virtually now. And so if you have that link, I encourage you to do it. I'll tell you, if you don't have an account, they're very gender binary at Livestream. They will ask you your gender. We've complained about it a lot. They don't care. They're big. But it's still a good service. This is the world of this. You make compromises all the time. But if you don't have an account, I'd encourage you to set one up, because later we'll be doing our worship service on live stream, which is the way that we do it. I want to walk you through it. So I want you to be able to see it as and be it, actually to be part of it, not watch it like it's television, but create it. So I hope that you have a live stream account already. If you don't, upload it on your little device, or you'll be sharing with a neighbor. And I know that you can multitask, because we all secretly do it all the time now. So anyway. So I just want to thank, again, Joe and Ben and all of you for welcoming me so hospitably. The UCC, I would say, saved Christianity for me. I grew up Unitarian in West Virginia in a Baptist neighborhood. And needless to say, what I was introduced to as Christianity, I learned a word in seminary, which is a little extreme, Christo-fascism. But I really thought that was Christianity. So when I went to United Theological Seminary, which was a UCC seminary in the Twin Cities, I would screw up my courage to say what I really thought, and then people would go, yeah, all the time. So it really saved me. So thank you. Thank you. I really mean that. I think that you have saved Jesus for a lot of us, who really was a bully in my childhood, I'll tell you. So what I want to do today is tell a little bit of our story. Then I want to have you participate and be the community in worship, hopefully with some people who are also there on live stream. I don't know. One reason we use video is because right now I am impaled behind this microphone, and you guys are all in community together. So that's one reason I don't do this on Sundays, because it takes me apart from the community. But, and then we'll share what we've done, and then we'll have conversation. So, as Joe mentioned, we've been around a long time. We actually started during World War II, when the UUA wanted to reach out to soldiers. And then in 1970, and it was part of the UUA, this kind of, tracts going out. Then in 1970, this might sound familiar, they had a budget crisis and kicked us out. And so we became an independent congregation in 1970. So really, for 43 years, it's been an independent congregation. So, and that actually was a great thing, because it gives us a lot more ability to be nimble than being part of the denomination. So who are we? We're 3,500 people roughly, but that's not all virtual. So I want to be really clear about this. This is how we're different. Over 500 members of our congregation are in prison. These are people who are pretty much never allowed to be online. So a significant amount of what we do is not the online sanctuary. And I actually would love to do a different talk on that, because I love that ministry. But We have then a lot of older people who still just get our newsletter, and that's who we are, but they claim it as their church. Somehow that newsletter that they get in the mail feels to them. They come running up to me when they meet me, "You're my minister." And I think, you get a newsletter. It's really confusing, but that's how spiritual identity is. It's kind of mysterious. So there are a lot of those folks still. And then there are people who are online a lot. And we have a lot of religious professionals who are part of our group, and their families who never get to feel very real in churches. We have a lot of young adults who are part of our community. We have significant people who are in other countries, a lot of expats, but also some people who live in other countries. And sometimes it's great in worship when, two people from Kenya find each other. What city are you? Where? Oh my God, we're in the same city. You just see that happening. So we have people from around the world. And significantly, we have a community that's been gathering now. We started online worship 2 years ago, and we've done it weekly for a couple of years. And there's a lot of change. If we look at our analytics, every week, 30% of the community is new, every single week. So that's just the truth. We have about 600 people through a week. We do 3 services. We pre-tape them, and then the community really is in the conversation that the people have with each other. So we think, because you can't really know this, that a couple hundred of them actually stay for the whole service, and a lot of them come and say, "Oh my God, they're still going on," and leave, So that's what we do online, and we're confident that some of them who have us on are cooking or doing other things as they're watching it. So we also have the services on demand, and people can watch them anytime. But for us, we didn't even kind of want to do it on demand, because on demand, in my opinion, is not going to church. Coming together in the community and being in that service, for me, is coming to church. Now, I say that, but a lot of people never log in. So if you look at who's actually logged in, you might think 35 people are there, but we're looking at the analytics knowing, no, there are hundreds. Many people just pop the screen out, the chat gets on their nerves. So there's, people are meeting their own needs with this. So the way that we do it is we do video storyboards on live stream. The team that creates the worship is all over the country. And so we will meet early in the month with a theme, talk about who wants to do what, and then we'll work that out all in Zoom or on live stream. And we're nowhere. We don't have a physical location. So I would say people go deep. I am amazed by how people go. We learned this early on. Unitarian Universalists can get pretty heady. And so one of our first services was about big questions. And we had, what big question are you wrestling with? And we pictured people saying, where do you go when you die? Or, and the first person said, why is my husband having an affair? And we all went, because people don't say that to each other in a bricks and mortar church. There are things that people can say that are much more intimate online. We kind of regrouped after that. We're constantly regrouping. So our worship is really designed to connect people. It's really designed that way, even though a lot of the people are telling us in analytics they don't want to be connected. We're still designing worship to connect them. So how do we do that? I'm going to talk you through our worship service, then we're going to experience it together. I'm going to encourage you not to be anthropologists when you do it, but to really imagine that you're home and that you're not in this room together. Although we can sing together, because why wouldn't we want to do that when the songs are on? But at home, people are singing by themselves, and they're saying, my kid's dancing, and they're participating. Or they're saying, singing off key, singing loud. So I'm going to just kind of walk you through it and tell you how we do it. One thing is, I was saying to the YouTube guy, the live stream guy, now, how do I look at the people on live stream? And he said, well, don't do that. There are people in the room. And I said, but I always have to look at the camera. That's how we film. We're never reading. We never have a podium between us and the people. And we don't use a lot of sources, or at first I'd have Post-it notes all over my wall, and I'd try to surreptitiously have an outline. And you can edit that out, luckily. But really it never helps with intimacy. And what you're going for here is intimacy. You're modeling vulnerability to elicit vulnerability. And so we just look at the camera. We tell personal, anecdotal. It's not abstract. They're not long. They're our experiences. Those are the homiletic pieces. I counted, there are 6 ways in every service that we invite people to be part of it. So we start by saying our common chalice is lit. And then everybody, wherever they are, Anita's come to this, says the chalice is lit. The chalice is lit in Auckland. The chalice is lit in, Missoula. The chalice is lit. And so there's this of where the chalice is. So I'm going to invite you at that part to put your hometown in, because if it's all Cleveland, it'll just be like, what else is new? But put where you're really from, so you get a sense of the gathering that happens with the chalice lighting. Then we sing a song. Then we have joys and sorrows. And we invite people to share what's on their heart. And this is where people really share what's on their heart. And then I can't tell you, you've probably seen this from Facebook or somewhere, how good like a cyber hug can feel. So someone will say, my dog is sick. And then everyone will go, Meg. And it's like, sometimes I tear up, just watching people care for each other this way. It's such a simple way to care for each other, but it's very profound. So that's another way that people connect. During the offering, and some of this I'm telling you because we don't anymore say, hug each other. It's all kind of in the culture of it just happens now. People start, the chalice is lit. We used to say, please say the chalice is lit. We don't anymore. Because people just start saying it and then newcomers go, oh, okay, the chalice is lit. Okay, what's a chalice? It's a candle. Okay. So, then we do the offering, and we invite people in the offering to share their gratitude, what they're grateful for. As they're not giving us much money, we ask them to share what else they're grateful for. We'll talk about money later. Then we have, generally speaking, a couple of homiletic pieces with music or something in between. And then we have a reflection question. Well, kind of like what Rita did this morning, where people then share with each other, coming out of what they've been thinking about. They share with each other. Then we extinguish the chalice and everyone says, I carry the flame, which is kind of become our little slogan. It just emerged from the community, but I carry the flame has kind of become what we say to each other. I love that it emerged from the community that way. So we're going to show you these pieces. Today we have them on YouTube, because otherwise we'd have a live stream of a live stream and it would just get too crazy. So we're going to have, there'll be little blips in between them, because Saint Barb is dealing with a lot of little tiny video clips, which is how we make these. So you're kind of seeing how sausage is made when she changes them. And I'll be coaching you as she's changing them. But really, is everybody on live stream now? Are you ready? You ready to go to church? Because that's where it is. It's in live stream. So you can watch it here, but probably you'll want to watch it on your own screen, because it's really designed for that kind of watching. It should work on iPads. It should work, if you need the live stream app, but it should work on whatever you've got. Okay. So I'll coach you. And, I was going to show you, how people find it for us. This is our website, Quest for Meaning. This is the Seeker's site. And so when people come to our worship service, this is kind of the entrance. They come here, and then you can go to the worship page. We have a theme of the month, and this month our theme is memory. So then they come to the worship page. Right now there are kind of ads running all the time on it, and the covenant, and different announcements that run when we're not there. And then, so then it's embedded in that page. But today you'll be watching it on live stream, which is another way that people also watch it. Does everybody have the live stream link okay? Is everyone linked up? Anyone need it? That's a good question. It's in an email from Joe. That's what I know. Anybody have the link handy? Livestream/UCC? Oh, just go to ucc.org and there's a link. Cool. extravaganceucc.org. Thank you. Okay, let's pause until we're all there. I asked, and they thought it would be. They've encouraged the people upstairs to be offline right now. So it's extravaganceucc.org? Is that what we're looking at? Okay. And we'll see. You might need to start sharing.
Do you want to sit behind the podium with that? Up to you.
Yeah, I'll sit down. Thanks. And turn your sound off, obviously. So everybody give a hoot when you're on. I'm not seeing live stream on Extravagance UCC. Right? Reese's? Oh, I see under the red list. On the menu, yeah, on the side. Got it. All right. So remember, you're not anthropologists. We got. Everybody got it? You ready to start? All right, let's go. We come together for a moment out of time in a place that is nowhere but holy. That was weird. We come together for a moment out of time in a place that is nowhere but holy, to celebrate what is deepest and most true, to honor the beauty of our own heart's longing, and to care for one another, cultivating imagination and wonder and building the courage to act for justice. Our common chalice is now lit. Now, when you say your hometown, the chalice is lit. There's the looks like people are still getting here. Is that true? I am. Okay, this song can play because we light the chalice through the whole song. Full screen there? It's probably bandwidth. It's probably bandwidth is what I wonder. Raise your hand if you need help. The building is offline now? No, the building is the UCC National Office. Oh. As you know, there is a time delay. So that's why our sound is off. And you may actually just want to watch here and type here because it's weird.
I'm so glad that you've come to join us today. It's November, and we're exploring the theme of memory. Today, we really want to look at how memory can be a factor for healing ourselves, healing our families, healing our broken world. It's a big topic, one that we could all spend our lives with, and historians do. They're fabulous historians who are bringing up new memories all the time for us to come to consciousness with. We're not historians, but we are co-travelers. And so as we gather together around our flame, as we gather together with the courage to look honestly at the whole picture, even the part we're not supposed to see, come, let us worship together. So, opening hymn. Leaving out some of the service. I'm not doing the whole thing. We're doing a whole section on Veterans Day and some stories about coming back from war. We're leaving out some of the service about Veterans Day and Remembrance Day and war, but we're going to do just a couple of the short homilies to show you.
Our gathered community is the chalice, the bowl which holds our spirits together, however distant our bodies may be. I invite you to place into this bowl the joys that are too great for one heart to hold, the sorrows that are too much for one heart to bear, the milestones and life transitions which call upon us to bear witness. In the heart of love, in the spirit of prayer, we hold one another in grief and in joy.
types thing would be held in a heart of love as a closing for that.
Do you remember when you were a kid, how good it felt to give people stuff? You know, that kids can be greedy, but there's also when a small child offers you, it could be a dandelion. I remember when my daughter gave her best friend when she was 3 a worm for her birthday. And it came from her deepest heart. That same year, she'd been trying to decide for her other mom, should she give her a roll of lifesavers or should she give her a Volkswagen Beetle, both of which she knew her other mom would really like. She had no concept of money yet, and I kept my mouth shut to keep her purity intact. And luckily for me, she chose the roll of lifesavers. She thought her other mom would prefer a roll of lifesavers to a car, which was very good because I couldn't really have afforded to get that car. 3-year-olds don't yet know what we who are adults know. Real things cost real money. We put this together with every bit of duct tape and volunteer energy that we can. Our musicians donate their music to us. Many of the folks working with us are interns working for very little money, but even so, it takes a fair amount of money to put this together. I hope that you will summon utter joy, the joy of a 3-year-old giving a worm or a roll of lifesavers, but with the wisdom of an adult, knowing that a cause costs more money, giving what you can honestly give, supporting this community of memory and hope. The offering will now be received.
I've gotten to be an artist at tying whatever the theme is to giving money. And I'll say it doesn't work very well. We can talk more about money later. So this next piece will be first homily. One of my tech people just emailed me and said, "Why are you doing it that way? You should have downloaded everything on a computer."
I took the trip with 18 Unitarian African Americans, all of whom I took the trip with 18 Unitarian Universalists, African Americans, all of whom are powerful. We're going to try that one more time. I'd like to talk with you about the trip that I recently took to Africa. I took the trip with 18 Unitarian Universalists, African Americans, all of whom were members of All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C. It was a powerful experience. We began preparing for the trip in April of this year. We spent months going to museums, speaking with psychologists, actually even doing a DNA test to help us track our ancestors back to Africa. When we began the trip, we knew what we wanted to do, and that was to figure out how our identities as African Americans, how that identity is rooted in the continent of Africa, and how the experience of the Middle Passage shapes our lives today. So when we arrived in Africa, what we did was basically trace the routes that slaves took to the States. We began in the middle part of the country in Kumasi, and from that place traveled south. There was a location called the Slave River, where you would think about FedEx, the way that packages come in from all over the country and go to this distribution place. That's what Slave River is. But it was only for humans that were being prepared to be sold and sent to the West. But what happened in that place was that people came, they were assembled, and they were cleaned. After they were cleaned, they were then branded and sold. It's a very, very powerful place to be in. Lots of energy is still there. And so we were proud of ourselves being so touched at that moment that we decided to sign a wall of memory that's right at the edge of that place. And what we did was we had our director of religious education write the name of All Souls Unitarian Church on the wall. We each took our hands and placed our hands on her back, basically creating a link all around. We were all signing that wall. Spirit of Life, which was an incredible way for us to connect not only with that moment, but also to think about how our own theology, how our own sense of spirituality was connected in that moment. So in actuality, in each of the places that we went, the next two were the actual dungeons where slaves were kept. It was amazing to walk into this space because people were kept there for 4 to 6 weeks while they were waiting for ships to take them to the West. And you can imagine what it would have been like for 200 people to be in a room that's 50 feet wide and maybe 200 feet long with a small window for light and air. But they spent 6 weeks in that space, and all of the human activity that happens as we eat and remove the fluids from our bodies happened in that space, and it wasn't cleaned out. So now, 2013, we're in that space, and there literally is 4 inches of the only way I can describe it is called tar that is still in that space. So when we began to think about standing on the shoulders of our ancestors, we literally were doing that. In that moment, in that space, in the confusion and the horror and the deep sense of pain and agony that was still there, we sang Spirit of Life again. We each brought artifacts from members of our congregation, photographs of our ancestors who were there, who we knew were traveling with us. And in that space, created an altar. We prayed, we said names of our ancestors, we poured libations, and again, we sang Spirit of Life. Because as I think about it now, the phrase, roots hold us close and wings set us free. I mean, wow, that's the place where you really experience that. Where we're thinking about our ancestors, the people who were there, and now we, hundreds of years later, coming back to that same place. We're honoring them and also representing the kinds of lives that we have today. It was a remarkable experience and one that I will never forget. My memory of who my
story like the one that Dr. Mark Hicks just told that centers on the power of community, coming together with shared values and using art and music and beauty and honoring the ancestors, you see how we can begin to bear memories that are almost unbearable. I'm in awe of that story of what those people, those pilgrims from All Souls Church in Washington, D.C. did together. Something that they could have each done separately, but something that holding that memory together made the unbearable able to be faced. For those of us who have grown up with the privilege of white skin, we haven't really had that kind of community to bear our own unbearable histories. In our cases, the histories were not of being tortured and sold as if we weren't human. It's a different kind of unbearable story. It's a story of our own ancestors not respecting the humanity of other people, of people that we now know to be so full of life and love and gifts, and they're our friends, and we picture our own ancestors doing the kinds of things to these people that Mark and the other travelers from All Souls Church witnessed. How do we hold and heal that kind of memory? I think the first challenge for those of us who are white really is talking about it. I don't know about you, but I find it very hard to get most white people to talk about being white in a way that means very much. We are so trained to believe that we don't have race, other people have it. We're just somehow neutral, as if we don't walk around in bodies that hold particularity as other people do. How many times have you heard white people say, oh yeah, I'm from no culture at all? So part of the challenge for me as a white person has been to recover some of the shared memories of my family. For instance, I always knew that one side of my family, the North Carolina side, were slave owners. There they were in Burgoa, North Carolina. I don't have to look far to know about that. But the other side of my family, the one that I took pride in, the pioneers, I learned about through this story. I was given 4 sherbet glasses that these pioneers carried with them from Virginia to Missouri. And always as a child, I pictured kind of like, because this is the image that I've been given culturally, something like Little House on the Prairie. You know, a little pioneer family with mom, dogs, and kids, and maybe with a couple other little pioneer families on their wagons, heading bravely across that terrain. And I always pictured the woman fiercely guarding these sherbet glasses, saying, we're leaving Virginia, but I want to have something really beautiful when we get to Missouri. Those are stories that I told myself. No one told me those. They just showed me those sherbet glasses, and I kind of filled in the rest. Never did it occur to me until years later, reading a book of family history, that in fact the reason that my Virginia relatives chose Missouri to move to is precisely because they could take along some of what they considered their key property. They could take their slaves with them. They deliberately chose to move to a slave state. And all of a sudden, when I think about those sherbet glasses and who protected them and how they felt doing so, I have to entertain, again, with no knowledge but only imagination, I have to entertain other possibilities of how it felt for them. Suddenly I imagine a slave, perhaps a child, perhaps an adult, who is tasked with making sure that everything on one of those carts is okay. Suddenly I don't picture that community that's all together, equally suffering all of those Sherpa classes from Virginia to Missouri wasn't, oh, I want to protect what's beautiful. It was, oh, I need to protect something that's somebody else's, or I could get in serious trouble. I don't know. I don't know what it was like. When I read the family history that finally informed me of why my ancestors went from Virginia to Missouri, the slaves are portrayed as wildly happy to be there, as if they just adore being there and doing all that work. Nothing is ever mentioned about them wishing they were somewhere else. And indeed, the stories of the Civil War portray it from out there in Missouri as if those slaves really are rooting for the South and really are right there as part of the family. And it breaks my heart, because suddenly I have to see my ancestors as people who didn't know how to communicate with people right there, living with them in isolated Missouri. When we try to reconstruct memory, when we're looking at ancestral memory, there are so many emotions that come. For those of us who are white, some of those emotions are truly not helpful, and especially I would name shame as unhelpful. For me to feel guilty about what my ancestors did is appropriate. What they did was wrong. They owned other people. What they did deserves my attention and my atoning in this life, doing what I can do to heal the vestiges of slavery that are still alive. But for me to go into shame about what they did, to believe that because they did that, they were no good and I'm no good, and I'm just going to throw them out and really just feel terrible about myself being white, is helpful to no one. Shame produces no meaningful activity. All that it does is take us down a spiral where we're basically just stuck. So I don't tell this story because I wish to engage in my own shame or public humiliation about this. I say it because all of us need to recover memories that are almost as painful as those that the pilgrims from All Souls Church uncovered when they went to those former hideous prisons. Don't hear me wrong. I don't mean to say that slave owners suffered as much as slaves. Not at all. I would never say that. What I do mean to say is that my legacy as a white person is one of broken communication, is one of hiding from the truth, is one of denying who and what my family was, and that there is also healing necessary to bring there. So as I go about my remembering about my own family, that is my work, to claim who I am, to understand the privilege that I carry, and to make sure that I am listening to the voices of other people who are near me and respecting them as equal to my own. It's not easy work. Remembering is not always easy. Sometimes we remember what we really would prefer to forget. And yet there's no healing without going through it. Denial doesn't get us there. I am so glad to be part of this community where all of us can heal together.
That was longer than usual and obviously very somber service this week. So then we have a reflection question, which we invite people to respond to.
Close my eyes and I am there alone.
And now we come to the time in our service when we extinguish those chalices that we lit for this special time together. But never do we extinguish that flame that we carry, the flame of love, the flame of commitment to justice, the flame of our commitment to awaken wonder and imagination in ourselves and in those around us. If you carry that flame, please say with us now, I carry the flame.
I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. I'd urge you to get up and move during this song. If maybe you're tired of sitting, you could actually stretch and sing. Let it shine. Okay, you can phase that out. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for doing that. The technical difficulties definitely don't help, but it seemed like yesterday people were groping for what might it look like. And I thought just seeing it rather than having me talk about it. And one of the gifts of the fact that I'm from outside the UCC is you can see it and say, that's kind of like us, but not quite, and not have to feel guilty about that. You can just know that, you know. So that was very smart of them, because when they invited me, I was like, but Darkwood Brew is so cool, you know. But in a way, having an outsider comes gives freedom to you to go, kind of, that's kind of it. November is just shaped up to be sort of a heavy month for us. We did Day of the Dead last week, and then this week we ended up doing this, you know, remembering about racism, and then the week after that we're doing Transgender Day of Remembrance. It's, you know, it's not, I mean, we're doing another service too on the night we do Transgender Day of Remembrance, but I was like, after I shot 3 videos, I was like, everybody else shoot really happy videos this month. So, and mine was much longer than usual. What we do is we parse out what we want to talk about, and then we go shoot, and we bring the drafts in and show each other. So I was like, well, that needs to be cut in half, and it needs a lot of B-roll footage, you know, images. And the people on staff were like, no, you need to tell that whole story. And I was like, really? Because that was 9 minutes long, which is really long for video. And slower than usual, because one of the things about video generally is that you talk faster. But, you know, there's some things you just can't say fast. So we meet once, and we look at the rough draft, and we meet again. We go on live stream, we watch it, we brainstorm what hymns might work with it, and songs, and it's a joke that everybody in our midst, all of our friends, our families, our pets, everything that we are ends up in our videos. You know, my kitchen's in there, you know, it's just people are like bonded with my colander, you know. So, because if you don't, I mean, if you have a studio, great, but if you don't, you work with what you've got. So, you know, I've shot at the dog park about an off-leash faith, and I've shot at, you know, I've shot at Occupy about occupying faith, and, you know, so that's the beauty of this. Once you're freed from this, you start really looking at the world differently, looking for sacred places, and it's amazing. So I just wanted to share briefly and then move to some conversation. I was going to share our 3 biggest mistakes so far. There will be more. Our 3 biggest gifts so far and our 3 biggest surprises so far, just because we're a few years out from where this is. So I would say our biggest mistake, especially financially, was hiring a pricey firm to do the questformeaning.org website. we happened to come into money and we went, oh, how perfect, we'll spend it. And if I had it to do over again, and especially now with the way that WordPress and, you know, some of the other templates are just so good, I would never, ever. But we just needed to start. We just needed to do something. And so people that I know say, oh, it wasn't that much money, but, you know, because we are held together with duct tape, I wish we hadn't done it. And some of the things about our website we're still recovering from. Because what turns out that people who can do great, this was the same firm, I designed the UA Standing on the Side of Love campaign right before I left there, and it was the same firm, and they were perfect for that. They were not perfect for this. They couldn't, all they kept doing was looking at, you know, fundamentalist churches' web presence and saying, okay, you're kind of like that. And we're like, truly not. Our people are just not looking for authority and, you know, the same things at all. And so we ended up, yeah, spending a lot of money. The second thing is that we made that Quest for Meaning website for seekers. So Quest for Meaning, those are words that anybody could use. Gamers use them a lot. But we deliberately picked words that were not about Unitarian Universalism, which is kind of, and I say this knowing there are UUs watching, kind of a 10-syllable kiss of death. And, you know, so we just didn't want to burden seekers with wading through all of that. But it's a 10-syllable kiss of death if you don't love it. But if you love it, it's a 10-syllable identity that gives you great pride in what you live for. And so those are two really different audiences that you're trying to reach. And I can see that here with reaching, you know, the religious professionals, all these people who are in the churches and want more, and reaching the spiritual but not religious. It's too real. So we ended up with two websites. That's why in the packet you got clfuu.org and you went, this is like a basic 1.0 website. What's the big deal? That's because we needed to have another website where we could just Unitarian Universalize it all over the place and send people there. And so that is a huge issue. The messaging, we're still all tangled up. Those two communities are still all tangled up with messaging. We've got miles to go on it. And there's no simple answer to that. And the third mistake, I think, is that I just presumed that users were just going to jump in and start co-creating and start giving money and really just be right there. And the truth is that the culture of Unitarian Universalism, which I believe we share some history with you guys, is one of really wanting things to be just right. So people really aren't up for kind of doing something like my friend Mark Hicks, I shot that with, you know, a flip cam. I mean, that you could see that wasn't ideal video quality, but I knew the story. When he started telling me, I was like, I've got to take footage of this story. It's such an amazing story. And so, and he's willing to roll with it. But a lot of our churches, they're like, well, we can't do anything that isn't very high quality. It will make us look bad. And so that kind of desire to jump in and play and experiment that I expected to be everywhere, I've had to really hunt for it. I've had to really hunt for it, and it's there. That'll take me to my three biggest gifts. It's absolutely there. It's just that it's not in the congregations that I thought would support us so much. So the three biggest gifts, which you could call luck or you could call grace, I tend to think of it as grace. The first is really the gathered community, which can take an okay service and make it holy. It happens over and over. You know, we'll be walking through it and I'll go, well, it seems kind of two-dimensional, but it's what we've got. And then we'll have it and the community gathers and they just sanctify it with their presence over and over. You know, it's just an amazing thing. I mean, it happens in bricks and mortar churches all the time, right? You show up with your okay sermon and all of a sudden the Spirit moves and, wow, you're there, you know. It happens also online. That's the biggest gift, I think, is that the community itself has such kindness and generosity of spirit and really transforms what we do. The second thing I would say is that musicians, Sweet Honey in the Rock, Eastside Barnwell, first week, you know, somebody that I know a little bit, sure, you can use our music. People have just been so generous. We're very careful about music and musicians and copyrights and all of that. We don't, and it's surprising who says yes and who says no. You know, Leonard Cohen said yes. Ryan and Macklemore, did I get that right? Yeah, they said yes. Dar Williams, come on, said no. You know, so it's unpredictable who will say yes and who will say no. So you just got to ask. You just got to ask. And that generosity, we don't pay the musicians, we don't pay the guest preachers, we're just shooting stuff all the time, and people are incredibly willing and generous about that. That's a huge gift. And the third one, I would say, the third gift, and if you're listening, you know who you are, is interns. You know, we have 6 seminarians or people just out of seminary this year because they want these skills and they don't have them. And they're really excited because I let them do real work. Because if they didn't let them, there would be nobody to do the real work. It's not like they're tailing me around watching me do something I know how to do. We're all making it up together. And I would say to you that seminaries and seminarians are huge gifts in this, and will, you know, just be people who you can enlist, and they're willing, they're hungry to do it. They want to learn the skills. The first year that we did this, actually, I had a halftime minister. She was halftime at King's Chapel. If you've been to Boston, it's like the oldest church in the country. It's like made out of cement, and I mean, it's before we split up, you guys. It's old. And so she was halftime there, and they still use like 16th century liturgy, and halftime with us. And she turned out to have a degree in music. So every week we'd say, go sing a song and record it so we can have a hymn next week. And, you know, it's been like that. Really, I've been amazed at the skill sets, you know, MBAs, people who were in computer tech before seminary, people who did marketing, people who were religious educators. All these skills that we need just walk to us. And that is the fabulous thing about this culture of generosity that is open source and is online. So those are the 3 biggest gifts. And then the 3 biggest surprises. The first one I mentioned already, the depth of sharing that goes on, the intimacy. Now, you guys were sitting in the same room, and I noticed a few people did share intimate things, but if you're sitting at home and you're in a very familiar environment, you might feel safer to really say something about what's going on at home. You know, we have an app. I'll pass out a bookmark later, but I'm just, every day I look at it and I can't believe what people are just posting on this little app about their joys and sorrows. They're just posting it to the universe because they need to tell someone. They just need to tell someone. And so that just, it kind of delighted, but really astonished me at first. The second one is, this isn't something I would have thought we were gearing up to do at all, but is being there when disasters fall. So when Newtown, Connecticut happened, and everybody's on Facebook feeling horrible about it, it took us about an hour for one of my smart interns to say, hey, why don't we hold a service of mourning tonight? And so we did. You know, we went, hey, if you want to come together and sing and pray, come at 8 o'clock to our live stream station. And a whole lot of, you know who came? A ton of ministers came, because they had to go minister to their congregations, and they were reeling themselves. And a whole lot of other people. We had several thousand people, I think, that day. And then when the Boston Marathon happened, we knew instantly. We didn't have to wait 2 hours. Oh, this is something we do. And then that day when everyone in Boston was in lockdown, we've got a ton of people in Boston, so we were there with them. You know, we just cranked up the live stream and just had it running all day, and we weren't creating new content. We were pulling out songs and prayers about fear and grief and all of that. And it was just like, oh, this is what we're here for. Look at this. And then the third surprise is I've talked about how people share really intimately, but there's this dance about revelation and protection that I haven't got it yet. So people are really willing to share, but they're not in other ways. So one of the things that people just don't want to do is say, come to a Zoom meeting and talk face to face. Typing is a level of comfort that they're good with. And, you know, so we're just trying to figure that out. Well, let's try this and see if people come. We tried, it was the worst idea in the world. Not as bad as paying for the website, but we tried a prayer service on live stream. It was such a bad use of technology. It was like you wanted to just say, stop praying now. It was just horrible. But people just kept going, you know, and I was like, oh my God, you know. But when we say, come to Zoom and let's pray for each other, don't want to do that, you know. So it's interesting to figure out how to get this technology lined up with comfort and intimacy and all of that. So that's been a surprise that we haven't figured it out yet. I thought I'd know and it would just work. So I just thought I'd share what's next for us. When we started, my slogan was, let's just throw spaghetti at the walls and see if it sticks. And this year, my slogan has been, what is all this spaghetti doing all over the walls? Because a lot of it's stuck. And so we have things like a YouTube station that's just like a disaster, just a pileup of unsorted, untagged, so now I'm like, go clean the closets, so, where's Ashley? Ashley was telling me about this book, The Lean Startup, where you do one thing, you do it really well, then you move on, and I was like, what a good idea that would have been. Except that's not how churches go, right? We just kind of have to find the people and find the pulse. And so, so that's been tricky. So that's part of what we're doing, is just cleaning up. The second thing we're doing is paying a lot more attention to raising money. Because, after 3 years of interns, I'm thinking, I love interns, I really do, but gosh, I love staff who stick around too and who, learn and then get to stay and keep knowing what they learned. We've had a number of interns stay 2 years, which has been a huge blessing, but 5 years, that would be great too. So we need a capital campaign, and if there is monetization here, I have yet to find it. And I read an article about Twitter on the plane that said, they didn't have a monetization plan. They didn't make any money for 4 years. And donors, now look at them, how many billions are they selling for, right? But it took them a while to figure out what Twitter was actually going to do. And so they were kind of toying around with it and figuring it out, and I think the UCC is a little better than the UUA on this, but there's kind of not a lot of money around for experimentation and trying. And so I'm really happy to hear that spirit of experimentation lives in this project, because without it, and without the ability to get to fail without being shamed for it, and without people saying, see, I told you that was a bad idea, you can't do it, because there are just going to be a lot of bad ideas. Just like today there were technology problems, there always are. It's just life, you just move on. So the third thing coming our way, I think, is just more and more collaboration. More and more, like the Transgender Day of Remembrance this year, we're going to do in a huge coalition. We're basically hosting it for a trans spirit group that's going to do a lot of the content, just like happens in bricks and mortar churches when community groups come in. And that's what I want to do a lot more of. Like, if Extravagant starts online stuff, I'd love to do, Advent together or something. I mean, I just think curating other people's stuff, but also co-creating is just the way forward in this, because our people are drawing from so many sources. I have no belief in the world that the people who come to Quest for Meaning are loyal to and only come to Quest for Meaning. They're going to Buddhist, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, all kinds of other sites. They're in families that are multi-faith. That is just the way it is. And they don't really care who made it. They just care what they get. They want to be part of community. So I think collaboration with each other is the way to go. So I'll hand out these bookmarks, which kind of are our little, here's everything we do. And then let's move into conversation. I know a lot of you know a lot of stuff. So we have a lot of time for that. Are you shell-shocked or? Okay. You should probably come up and talk at the mic so that other people can see you.
This is really basic, and probably in the weeds too much, but you talked about musicians and getting them to offer their music and everything else. Do you hold a copyright license for music? And if so, I mean, I'm sure you're rigid about it, but just kind of walk us through that a little bit.
We bought Christian copyright when we started. We paid for, songs, but the trick with that is you have to have musicians to sing the songs, which is great for bricks and mortar churches, but for us it meant getting people to record and having good quality recordings. So what we do is just ask musicians for permission. We don't put their music on YouTube, and we have a musician's page where we promote them, and that's what we tell them, that we're going to make it so that people can't just grab it for free from our service, although somebody smart could grab it off of live stream, but we're not making it as easy as YouTube. And a lot of them are just really happy to share, and that's who we work with. We we've decided, since we're a UU congregation, that the songs in the hymnal are ours to use. People might argue with that, but we just decided that. And we don't use poetry. I mean, you guys are really lucky, because scripture, the copyrights really are not such a big problem, but, you know, for UUs, like people like Mary Oliver are our scripture, and we just can't use it. We can't use poetry. Well, luckily, we have a really good poet as one of our ministers. We use her poetry a lot, but, so that's our copyright deal. And that's why it's so personal and so direct. We're not, you can quote prose, fine, but poetry's bad. How many other ministers besides me create them? So I'm full-time, and I have a half-time minister of lifespan faith development. And then I have a half-time prison chaplain. So, and then we have 6 interns. So it's really, the interns are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Thank you, interns.
I was surprised by how much of your content is clearly created in-house, and how you came to that decision as opposed to doing more of a curation model with some hosting.
That was a question about creating our own content versus curating. In pretty much every service, there's one piece that we get from somewhere else, and that may shift. We may curate more as there's more stuff to pull from. Like, I'm really so excited to find out about groundswell-movement.org, which I already sent to my whole staff, and they're already on it looking for content. You know, we use things like Symphony of Science or, you know, other sites, TED Talks. We can pull out a piece of Brene Brown or somebody, you know. TED is very willing for you to use that. But finding content that works is a challenge. I mean, you have to get people who want to share their content, which oddly a lot of religious people don't, which seems really odd. I mean, so, yeah, like we, you know, when we do Jewish holidays, we're constantly getting told by Jewish groups, no, don't use that. So it's like, really? I don't know. Anyway, so if I were starting over, I might do that differently, because it's a different time now. I mean, I think that if there were a UU congregation like Darkwood Brew, I might be using our resources to build community around that instead of creating content, because creating content is really time-consuming, and you can't do everything. So I think curation is a really key role to play, and I think our website for sure is going to move more and more into curation. I think we'll still have a couple of original pieces, homiletic pieces every week, because I think we have something different to say than we're finding many places. You know, I mean, if you know of a site with white people talking about racism, please give it to me. You know, I mean, who's not Tim Weiss? You know, I mean, who's coming from I don't mean to single him out, but you know, who's coming from a place of let's heal together, and we're not going to be making fun of people here. We're going to be talking from the heart about hard stuff. But I think curation, if I were starting over, I would probably start with a lot more curation than we did. Well, all the interns are doing their own videos, and what I do is I film twice a month for about 2 hours, and now we light the chalice. And now we've come to that time when we, you know, it's like, you know, so a lot of my presence is always in those parts around the edges that are by now very familiar and very quick and easy. And I hire a wonderful young man who graduated from community college in film for $20 an hour, who does all my editing, and he buys equipment with this money, and he loves it because most of his jobs are also really entry level. He doesn't get to do the creative part, and I keep feeling guilty about paying him $20 an hour, and he keeps saying, No, I'm working for Target for a lot more, but I don't get to do the fun stuff. I like to, So I don't know what I'll do when he gets famous, but until then, that's what I'm doing. And my interns are making their own using iMovie pretty much, which makes it pretty doable. Without a Mac, it's harder. I never thought of saying to interns until we had some. It really helps to have a Mac, because iMovie just makes it so much easier.
So your tech person takes the individual pieces, edits them together, and then I just want to really get a sense of how the back end works. Who's uploading it?
So it's all on live stream on a storyboard. So each person who creates something uploads it to live stream, and then Laura Campbell, our intern working on worship, who's fabulous and is there for the second year, came in, learned last year, and is now holding that portfolio. She really makes sure that it's all correct. So she does a lot of the hymn videos, and that's really 20 hours a week. All that she's doing is working on worship. So
and since I have the mic, I'll say one more thing.
Yes,
one thing that really impressed me from our experience here of your worship service, and I don't mean to compare and contrast with Darkwood Brew, but I'm going to for a second. I also like Darkwood Brew, but Darkwood Brew has this sense that there's something going on in a place, and I'm not in that place, and they're talking with one another, and I'm overhearing it, and the very directness of you looking in the camera, it's much more personal of me and you and us with you than it is in that third person kind of experience.
And that's why curating's hard, because say there are great sermons given in churches, a fabulous UU sermon even, it's more like this. I know this is boring to watch. It's just me behind a podium. Even if I'm standing in my kitchen and it's a close-up, it's more interesting, and usually there's B-roll, and it is always, I'm talking to you. I did an offering lately. I'm talking to you. No, not the person behind you. And we're always, it's kind of quirky, but I've just kind of gotten used to talking to cameras without, the distraction of real life people between me and the camera. And I think one thing that I model well is that being like beautiful or traditionally good looking doesn't actually mean that you're great on camera, and being perhaps plainer looking doesn't mean that you're not good on, at first all of us are like, oh my God, when we see each other on camera. But, you just get used to it, like anything, and you just get comfortable with it. And so that's something I would say is don't let the discomfort of, every single intern, their first video that we're all watching together, they're like, my hair! And the rest of us are like, don't even notice it. So you've got to just work through the discomfort about that.
At Holy Covenant UCC in Charlotte, North Carolina, they have two different campuses, and they used to do it so that the sermon was done and you were overhearing the sermon, and they found that didn't work. So now if your guest preached there, or if you're the preacher there, you go early and you preach it once just looking at a camera, and that's what the people are seeing at the time that you're preaching it live to the people there, so that they feel that you're actually present.
That's fabulous, but if you are live streaming in bricks and mortar churches, even giving a shout out to the people watching it goes a long way. Or even if you're podcasting, I always do this when I guest preach places. I just go, hey, to those of you who are listening, I'm glad you are. I hope you'll come by sometime. Because no one ever talks to them. And there are tons of people watching or listening, but, mostly they're just kind of invisible. So I agree, it's like a background, foreground shift to do that really direct communication.
Hi, another question. Can you talk a little bit about preaching length and your experience with how different lengths of content function, and also how you play with different pieces of this service throughout the week as opposed to just the bulk experience?
Yeah. So Ashley was asking, she was filmed, great. She was asking about the length of pieces. As I said, this 9 minutes is about as long as it gets, and I sometimes take senior minister privilege and go on, because what we've learned is people are okay with that. You know, people actually get upset when they don't see enough of me. So I feel like it works more because they know me. I'm a known entity. It's not a guest showing up. We usually have 3 content pieces that are spoken, and usually they total 18 to 20 minutes, the 3 of them. And you know, here's what's interesting. When I first started doing this, I would have these, just like when I used to preach, I would write things, but when I started doing this, I would have really definite outlines of the 3 points I was going to make and the 3 illustrations and, you know, all the stuff we learned. And what would happen is, just like in a bricks and mortar church, when you're preaching and the Spirit moves and suddenly you're like, whoa, didn't even know I was going to go there. The beauty here is you get to edit. So if you go, whoa, and it's like, you look later and go, crazy talk? You get to just take it right out, you know? I mean, sometimes when I'm in bricks and mortar churches, I'm like, I need to rub my nose. Where's the B-roll footage, you know? So between B-roll and edits, you can really take a piece and make it look pretty good. And I mean, what I'm thinking, because our board just met and I was really, really like deep into our analytics. And what I'm thinking is, because so many people come and go, we need to create more standalone. I'm thinking of like, you know, I haven't got the name yet, but something like 6-minute sermons, or, you know, something catchy. That's not very catchy, but something where people can just very quickly come and get a message and not feel like, oh God, I got here for the joys and sorrows. I don't care, you know. But it's in time. It's in real time as well as on demand. So that's, I think, what we'll be playing around with, as well as even a 1-minute pullout of pieces, you know. So that's what I think part of getting the spaghetti off the walls will be, to play with the same message in different lengths of time and what does it do to it. Because I think that long 9-minute message I got, you know, I could see it in the room. People start to really sink into that message in a way that if it were 1 minute, it would be like, squirrel. I mean, you know, that's kind of like how we're used to hearing. So how do you surround it with the pieces that hold it and make it meaningful, even if it's shorter? Do you have opinions? I'd actually love your opinion on that. Ashley, you watch a lot of video.
There's a Facebook page called 90-Second Sermon, and it was started by a colleague of mine at a church in New Jersey, and she has her senior pastor. She's a producer in her former life, so she produces a 90-second sermon version of his full-length sermon that then goes up midweek.
And what is it, a teaser, or is it
he's literally found a way to make the sermon message efficient enough to translate into 90 seconds. And we've found that that's a groundswell. We found that the investment it takes for someone, because people are often procrastinating on our social media sites, the investment it takes for somebody to watch a longer piece, it's a lot to ask of somebody. So the 90-second version is, we had one version of it that got like 10,000 views. And we were like, this is a little church in New Jersey that just created this, and we packaged it in a way that it, and it was good enough content that it got a lot of traffic.
So that's your recommendation, to shoot for 90 seconds?
It's not my recommendation. I think that if content is good enough, then, you know, TED Talks, we invest that kind of time, but it takes such high quality.
Well, it takes a known entity like TED to get you in there, right?
Exactly.
And how many of us quit anyway, midway through TED Talks, you know?
Right.
So,
just a resource to share.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff we're going to be playing around with. Huh, that's really cool.
Thank you so much for this morning, Meg, and for all you do. I know that faith formation is a big part of the larger fellowship, and I guess I'm wondering, how does that translate into children and youth, and how does your ministry reach children and youth and or families, and the safety, security issues around that?
Oh, I wish there was a good answer to that question. We're just getting ready to start, I think, we're playing with, whether we're going to really flesh out Quest for Meaning kids videos, or we're going to start a separate, really kid-friendly, very, very simple website that stands alone. We're working on that right now. Right now, we're kind of not dealing with youth because of those safety issues. I mean, youth come to our services. We have the premise that everything we do is multi-generational, and so all conversation about anything needs to be appropriate for all the generations, and that's true in all of our closed Facebook groups and everywhere, even if there shouldn't be young people in there. There is not safety. I mean, there's no, this is one of those places where I see churches just seize up and stop. And what I say is, but our kids are already on all this stuff anyway in the other parts of their life, so are we just going to avoid it because it's unsafe? I mean, we've only so far had one horrific thing happen, and that is that somebody used a fake identity, lied to somebody, and basically scammed him, told him she was in love with him, just completely broke his heart. I mean, just broke his heart and spirit, using the church to link with him. And since then, I started looking at anybody, like for a while, I just looked at every, person with a hard luck story, like, really, is that true? But you can't keep looking that way, looking for the scams. It was horrible. I did a lot of pastoral work with him. He was an adult, but, if it had been a kid, it would have been that much more horrible. There are all kinds of things that are really challenging. Pastoral issues. I never thought our covenant would say you can't talk about suicide here, but it does. Because it never occurred to me that people would be talking about suicide in a Facebook group, but they are. So we're like, this is not, if you're suicidal, call us, get out of here. Facebook, because the group would just be like, it's unfair to the rest of the people. And there are people, we have people from all over the world. So, we have a gay man from the Middle East who's suicidal. Well, I'm sure not going to be calling the mental health professionals, I mean, and there are people I don't even know where they are, so there are a ton of things about this, but they're in all the rest of our lives already. This is the way it is. So do we try to just be pure and we're not going to do that, or do we say this is this big messy world that we're part of, and we have covenants, and we ask people to be who they are, knowing that some people, just as they can anywhere, are going to lie and abuse. So I think one of the things we've talked about doing for youth, but they're getting it everywhere. Like when I said to my 17-year-old, I think we're going to be talking about internet safety issues. So I think they're hearing these things about what not to do at school all the time, and what they're doing is another matter. I mean, we had all those drug movies when I was in school. They didn't work. So, yeah. Let's see. Danny.
Yeah, Meg, I noticed that as
It's your bracelet.
oh, my bracelet. I noticed as you were speaking, you were always smiling. Now, is that your natural style, or were you conscious of that? Were you conscious that you were smiling all the time?
Oh, yeah. That's, here's what you learn about doing video. If you don't smile, especially if your face has gravity in it, as mine does, you look dour. So people, like a lot of times on the news, you'll see community activists and they look like axe murderers. It's because everyone else is smiling and they're not. And so, when I did media training, we were taught to say, there's been a terrible bus accident. And so so now when there's a camera, I just, it's like those babies who just reflexively smile at the camera. But it's a welcoming message. I mean, I try not to, grin goofily while I talk about white racism or something. But on the other hand, I want to look kind. I want to look accessible. And so, hardly a week goes by in worship that someone doesn't, either privately or in the chat, say, I wait for your smile all week. So I'm very aware of that as the presenting thing. And, it could seem fakey, but actually by now it's a genuine response that I have to imagining the community that's behind the camera. So. Yeah, I wish I'd had media training before I did a whole lot of media. back in the 90s or on the right wing, because they'd show, like I was on with Robert Schuller from the Crystal Cathedral on a show about the Promise Keepers, and he was just grinning, and he looked like the kindest man in the world, and I was like, because nobody ever told me that TV cameras distort, and I wasn't really scowling, but if you looked at the two of us, the message was, here's a person who's happy and content, and here's a miserable, angry feminist who want, so I do. I smile. And the other little trick is, like, you just kind of turn your shoulder a little bit, and it looks normal on a camera, whereas if you're like this, especially if you're shaped like me, you look kind of like a table. So, but, any women, this is a good tip. Like, just turn your shoulder a little bit. You know that, Bob, right? Yeah. Who else? You could also say things. I know there are really smart people in the room, like Anita Bradshaw, who's been one of my mentors, who got a Lilly grant and studied all kinds of stuff about online stuff, and tells me I'm quite the anomaly because mostly it's young men doing this online stuff, right?
There's a lot of young men doing it. I think one of the things when you and I were having more regular conversation about all of this that I found so interesting is you kept using the terms with me when I would ask you about metaphors for what you were doing. You kept using incarnation as a metaphor. That, and you kept talking about open source God. And I think both of those concepts come through so clearly in the work that you're doing. And just gave me so much life in terms of working with looking at what you were doing. And
thank you. Yeah, a lot of colleagues don't like this, that we're doing this. And I was saying to Anita earlier that actually a pretty good friend of mine said to me, Unitarian Universalists work so hard to have an embodied theology, and you're taking it out of the body. You're making it all about the head. And I just looked at him and said, have you noticed where bodies are these days? They're at little devices. Those are the real bodies. They're not doing Tai Chi in the park. This is, I do think it's going where God's alive, where there's life. Yeah.
I had a question, which was, one of the things we've been talking about is that people come to technology from so many different abilities and interests. And, if you're a certain type of person, you're on Facebook, and if you're somebody else, you're on Instagram. And, some people don't even have broadband in their house, so they can't, access some of this stuff. And I was wondering if you guys have had any particular way that you approached that diversity in terms of welcoming or getting people onto technology, or just thinking about who your audience is in terms of the various platforms.
Well, the biggest heartbreak about the way that we use live stream is that it's not available on mobile devices that way. It's not designed for video storyboards. It's designed to be live. So today, this could be on live stream because it was live being filmed. So what we've just finally, I think, figured out is we need to get another computer that's on all the time, that's filming our, live stream, and just leave it there. Because, statistics about who has only mobile devices, more and more people don't use computers at all. They only use iPads or, tablets. And especially with young people and people of color, it's through the roof. So I'm like, okay, we're just, cutting off our feet here, doing it this way. And we've spent, I can't even tell you how many hours trying to solve what seems like it should be a really simple problem, and it just hasn't been. And we have a fabulous person, Beth Murray, in our office who just is there to talk to people. And she talks them through, like, for instance, I didn't get on this morning. I was watching all you guys comment, but I'm always on the UU live stream channel, and I don't need a login, and I have no memory of my login at all, so I was spending my time trying to get in there with you. I could see the comments. So, I'm thinking, this is probably how people feel, although in ours you don't have to log in to be part of worship. You don't have to have an account. You just get in there. But you guys capture the information, so I understand why you ask for it. But we don't. So we're trying to make it as accessible as possible, and so what we're doing more and more is moving all the pieces to YouTube. And then the other platform I haven't mentioned, which I think is really exciting, is Google on the Air Hangouts, which are, so Google Hangouts, right? You can talk to some people. So Google On the Air Hangouts broadcasts live to YouTube. So basically, you can have, so we have like a talk show. It's actually, let's see, yeah, it's on right now if anybody's here. It's called The View, V-U-U. It's meant to be stupid, it's okay. Anyway, we just talk about stuff. You know, it's just a bunch of people who greet every new situation with an open mouth, and we just talk about whatever's going on, either within UUism or in the world, or just whatever's on our mind. And it's the absolute simplest thing in the world. It takes an hour. We show up, we talk, it's already live, and then we leave. And it's just, you know, there's nothing, and you can watch it anywhere. You can access YouTube anywhere. So I think we're going to be moving more and more to using YouTube. If you looked at our CLF-UU site on a mobile device, it's actually cool, unlike on a computer, because it's a cross between an app and our website. And it has watch, listen, read, and you can just access a lot of stuff to do there. And so our YouTube station's right there. And so I think that's what we'll be doing more and more, is just moving as much as we can to YouTube, and then 90-second sermons, maybe. That's interesting. And I'm also, there's one, I'd love to know if anyone here has used Spreecast, because it's something I'm interested in right now. They just moved out of beta. It's another platform that a lot of news stations use it to broadcast live. Spreecast, like that kind of candy, spree. Cast. And you can have people talking live and people chatting. And so that's one that I just saw it came out of beta. I tried it before and it was not ready for prime time, as I often think Google Hangouts are not ready for prime time quite, but you know, just got to keep trying stuff.
This brings me another question, which is, where do you go to learn about these new things? Like, I think that's one of the really interesting things, is sort of where are people learning about technology, and I'm just curious, do you have certain places that you go to see that Spreecast has just launched, or you just live in a certain type of work?
You know, I look at who people like Ashley are following on Twitter, and I follow those people. You know, people who really know about how to do video and stuff. And so I use Twitter a lot to see what's going on. And because there are a bunch of people with blogs or, you know, different things. There isn't one that I love. Anybody have one that you absolutely love for keeping up with this stuff? Certainly other people in the room who keep up. What do you guys use to keep up?
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to open up the, there's a mic. I go through these periods where I just kind of research, and I just kind of float around the web, and I see what they're using. I read a lot of different magazines, a lot of different blogs, and there's not one particular one that I'm stuck on. But I do use Twitter, like I'll put in a hashtag or something, and then just see what comes up. And I have figured out how to get live streams to play on to mobile devices.
We'll talk.
And tablets, so yeah, we can talk.
I'd love to talk to you about that. Back there.
So, wow, that's loud. So another suggestion, so I'm on the board of the Social Media Club in Boston. So there are chapters all around the country, all around the world.
Yeah, good point.
So if you want a way to be involved is to either use, to go to Meetup or Eventbrite in your area and just like seek out and look for groups that are already talking about this. They're offering meetups, and it's free, and you can just go and start connect with people who this is what they do professionally, or they have an interest, and it's a simple way to just begin to make friends and get to know stuff. At the Mass Conference, we do periodic web fests or just periodic, events to help educate. So it's those. You have to. There's no one place. But if you can start making friends locally who are really into this, then they can start to connect you, and that's how you figure it out.
That's true, and it's all local on the web sometimes. But those clubs are cool. And I know the Boston one's really strong. And I actually have started working sometime in this collaborative workspace that has a lot of techie people there. So I'd love to just talk to them. So yeah, that's what's so cool about this culture. Like, and we share this theology. I find that social media is so theologically compatible with, non-hierarchical, God is still speaking in open technology, right? It's, there's no like authority who's declaring it and it's done. There's always a conversation, and people are always jumping in and sharing, and offering, I can show you how to do what you don't know. And so it's a fabulous model of leadership, I think.
How does your community grow over time? I mean, are you happy with the size, or do you want to, are you happy, or do you want to do outreach, and how do you do that on the web? Or can you even sustain the growth?
Yeah. How does the community grow over time? There are so many sub-communities, just like in any congregation, right? And so what I'm interested in right now is finding ways to reach out to those people who don't want to come to services, but who want the message. And so one thing that we use is Google AdWords. We use them a lot. Google AdWords has gotten really friendly to nonprofits, and they used to rule out religious groups, but we actually won, and I don't know what you have to do to win it, but I don't think it's that hard. $300 worth of free Google AdWords every day. So we use those to promote. We've especially been promoting our daily meditation, the Daily Compass, because it's so simple. Promoting online worship, you never know when you have these free things when it'll actually go on. And if you really want to get people to online worship, you need to promote it, go now. People aren't going to go, I'll come back in 3 hours. So we promote our daily meditation, and we definitely see when we do that, it spikes, and then we see which words actually people seem to actually not only come for, but actually when they come, they're getting what they wanted, as opposed to they come and go, heathens, and, leave. So we've been playing around with that. My social media guy has been fooling around with that. And I forgot to say, I do have a very part-time minister of technology and a part-time social media director, without whom we could do nothing. Yeah.
To follow off Peter's question, do you have metrics or targets in terms of community size that you would like thresholds that if you reach X amount of people, would maybe allow you to do more, or I reach X amount of people and now I need to hire somebody, right?
Right.
Do you have that sort of in the back of your head?
We're just getting there. Like I said, we started by throwing spaghetti at the wall, and now we're going, a strategic plan has some merits. So we're just kind of coming around, but we had to just try some stuff, because to make up a strategic plan, like by sitting in a room together, we wouldn't have had anything to work with except wondering if what other people did might work for us. So right now we're wanting to reach out and get a lot more members, that is, the people who sustain us. So right now we have 3,500. Our fundraising committee wants to have 10,000. So what does that mean? That means that we will start by really building the UU base strongly. So we'll reach out to ministers to tell them, hey, when your people have surgery or they move, or hey, we're not trying to diminish what you do. We're trying to support it. So we'll be doing a lot of that kind of outreach, and we'll be adding staff when we can afford to. That's just a sad fact. But we've got this campaign that we're designing. I have a couple of our case for supports. You can see there. It couldn't be more vague, because apparently this is how you do it these days, and then you personalize for everybody. But anyway, yeah.
Hey, Meg, thanks for this conversation. Sort of in line with the conversation we had yesterday about church. What is church? There's an interesting thing that y'all are doing. I noticed with Quest for Meaning's website and gathering that you actually have a really solid call to action. You have a high bar. Instead of just, transient traffic where you just kind of come and like, oh, okay, I'm participating or not, and I might come back in a month or whatever. I don't know if you were going to talk about that today in particular, but I was very interested in the way that you set out criteria that in order to belong, you have to do X, Y, and Z, which is very different than anything I've seen before, and I thought it was cool.
Well, when I came, because what it means to be a member is to either give us money or to ask for a waiver. So when I came to CLF, I had a staff person literally spending a whole week processing people who came and left. And I said, you know what? We're giving everything away. Let's not. So we have been actually kind of discouraging membership because it was just a very time-consuming thing, and what it didn't mean. So that's going to be shifting actually considerably. It's not really you have to do these things. It's like, do you really want to join? Why don't you do all this stuff you don't have to give us money for, and then see if you also want to join. Sometimes people get really hurt by it, I'll say. And, you know, this is true in any church, right? The requirement to give money is offensive. And of course you can still have a waiver. But we just really didn't want to spend all our time with people. As you see on the website, there's a section called 10 Reasons You Might Not Like It Here. That was my way of also saying, hey, don't waste your time and don't waste ours, you know? Like, if you're a fundamentalist, you're not going to like it. Let me just tell you that. So to kind of shape it for people, that will be shifting, though. Right now, I think it looks like a higher bar because, yeah, we've kind of been not really encouraging membership for a while. Because we've been like, well, what does it mean to be a member? And I think that'll be a huge conversation for this community. What does it mean to be a member? Yeah, well, thank you. Well, thank you. I think it would be more of a compliment if when people joined, we made a big fuss over it, and, you know. So I think we're kind of in between worlds, but thank you for complimenting what's actually kind of half-baked at the minute. But
I have a question.
Hi, Meg.
Oh, sorry.
I just want, as we're talking about what it means to belong, and I haven't fully cooked this idea, so I'll throw that out that this is something kind of half-baked. But I've been reading a book by Joseph Myers, Searching to Belong, and he says there are 4 realms of belonging. There's the public realm, the social realm, the personal realm, and an intimate realm. And if you use the analogy of baseball, anyone who watches baseball, has a team, roots for baseball, they're in the public realm. You know, they enter the social realm if they start doing tailgating, going to stadiums, going to bars to watch the game, you know, going to the actual stadium to watch the game. They would get into the personal realm if they actually had some type of relationship with one of the players or the coaches. You know, if you marry a player, I guess you'd be in that intimate realm. So if you look at, a lot of times churches seem like we think we got to get the people out of the public realm and through the social realm and into that intimate and personal realm. And maybe the reason they're leaving is because we're trying to pull them into a place where they can't belong. Because if you look at the baseball, if you look at that model, a very small part of the population will ever be able to belong to that personal and intimate realm. But they will survive very nicely within the public and the social realms. And so maybe when we're looking at trying to affirm where people belong, we need to find a way to affirm that they belong to that public realm out there, and that's wonderful, and we love it that they're out there. Yeah, tell everybody about how much you love your church, just like you tell everyone how much you love your baseball team. You know, and if they come into the social realm and we can offer them that social part, that's great too. But not to be so insistent that, no, but you got to get in, you got to get more personal, you got to get more intimate, because quite frankly, maybe they can't. You know, that just might not be a place where they can belong.
You know, my favorite 2 things on the wall yesterday, I put this on my Facebook page. Someone said, church is where you're a host, not a guest. And then there was a lot of talk about church being where you belong and where you feel loved. And I thought if you put those things together, maybe what you get is you feel most loved when you're most loving. That actually it's by loving that we feel love, not by receiving love, you know, like, and so I think that, I don't know what realm of that it would be, but I think what you know, you can see woven through every piece that we do is, you're the ones, you know, and I think that's in most churches. You're not, I think it's it's belonging by claiming agency in this certain kind of way, to be a host, you know, to get to frame the conversation and have the party instead of going, I hate this party, I don't like artichoke dip, to like go, but over here is my party, you know. So I think that's what's cool about online, is that there's just a lot of room for people to be very intimate and be very distant, like.
So, I know we don't like to talk about money, but when you're doing the timeline, the full production, and it's being broadcast, do you ever have a call to action to asking people to give money while they're watching you?
I did it. If you missed it, that's how badly I do it. But there was one in there.
Okay. So I was trying to step out, I guess. But.
No, I do it every week. But what I've come to is, just like in a bricks and mortar church, people give less if the minister asks. I shouldn't be the one asking. It should be testimonies from the people who say, this saved my life. So that's what I'm trying to get, you know, but they're not going to do videos. That's what I've been asking. Would you? I finally thought, you know what? I'm going to start reading their letters, you know. Here's a letter from, you know, who says, this saved my life. And because if you look on our Facebook page, I said, what should I tell people? And one woman literally said, this place saved my life. So that's what the people will give money to. It's not because we're good, it's because they want to save people's lives. So we need to shift our discussion. I had one silly video I wanted to end with, but we'll do one more comment.
Well, this is just a tag on. So if I'm a first-time visitor and I feel like I want to give, how do I know how to give?
Usually when that goes, there's a ticker tape running along. Click here, and it takes you right to the PayPal page.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, can you do this silly video? This was made by Life Church TV, and I have to say that my staff have told me several times, quit looking at Darkwood Brew, quit looking at Life Church TV, because I get a little bitter with envy sometimes. But Life Church TV, which does a lot of this is just, I thought, a very funny video. Oh, you need the URL again? It's a very funny video that they made about what people look like when they come to online church, that I just had never seen anything like it. And so... I'll tweet the URL to that. You can watch it later.
You mentioned earlier that you get content from, was it Groundswell?
No, I'm going to. Are you kidding? I never heard of it until yesterday. Have I mentioned it 50 times since then? They have content they want people to share. And they want content. So they want our content too. Yeah. This is a very good person to know. Right here. Anything else? You guys have been really patient. There hasn't been a break. I think the idea now is to have a break until lunch. I said I couldn't stand here for 2 hours, but look, it happened. So, so I'm here, and I have cards, and I'd love to be in touch, and it's wonderful to meet all of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Meg. I just wanted to remind everybody that the UCC store is set up in the right outside the salons, and for this group only, they are offering, I think it's 20% off their prices. So they're awaiting you, and I hope you enjoy looking through there and enjoy your break. And then we'll see you at lunch at noon.